what is something tangibly or practically that they can do, or at least think about, to get in a space of man, the right action and doing a battle surgery within their mentality and their mind to live a good life?
First, we have to recognize that we are communal people. We can't do this by ourselves, right? There are people that poured into me. So when you look at wisdom, right? Wisdom takes a succession of things that happen in order for it to actually be possessed. That means that you have to go through experiences, learn from those experiences, have to watch other people that have overcame those experiences and how they move, and then study them and then implement what they are doing to your own. And then you have to go through trial and error to be able to come to a point where you have reached the level of, I have wisdom in this. I have an understanding, that I can deal with this any way that it comes at me.
Spiritual Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Bigger. I'm back again with another episode. And I got my brother from another, my friend, my compadre, my guy, Adisa Dempsey's in the building. Welcome back to Spiritual Fitness Podcast. Adisa, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Head out, chest out, doing the work, staying focused. It's about just taking it one step at a time as you elevate, grow, and become. I'm in a good space.
And I think it's important to hold your head high and to be open and do the work, because the work works. But you're a very spirit-led man in a lot of ways. You know, your father, your husband, you're a man of honor and integrity and authenticity. Let's talk a little bit about your journey growing up. Let's talk about your dad, because I want to kind of relate. Like, I had men in my life, that were providers. I didn't have so much guidance the way I wanted, but I had enough to kind of get through my struggles and hardships in life. But I think right now in the collective consciousness, the male essence and presence is not as valued as much as it once was, for a lot of reasons. But I know who you are and what you stand for. You've stopped a lot of things. You've helped a lot of things, and you're very grounded in who you are and what you're becoming. So who was the man in your life? I would think your father. And how did you see through him to be the man that you are today for your son?
Growing up, my father was an extremely serious man. I didn't find out later on in life that a lot of that seriousness came from a lot of hardships and trauma that he went through in his life. My father was the type of person where as though that he led with his feelings. And a lot of times that became tough growing up. Like, I had to be tough growing up, especially, growing up in West Baltimore. My father felt as though that I would have it hard just because of the way that I looked and because of the ethnical background that I came from. So he didn't give me no room or no wiggle room to fall into anything. Like, it was always hard on me. I had to earn everything. And it kind of instilled the type of work ethic that I have as a person today, right? I learned a lot from my father. I probably learned more of what not to be from my father than I actually learned what it was to be a man from him. I had other figures in my life that filled in the gaps of where my father may have fell short. And that's where community comes in, right? I know I talked to you before about Baba Imhotep, how much, he poured into my life and the man that I am today. There's been a succession of men, but he was the most consistent in leading the path that put me in the space that I am now, right? And like I said, I'm thankful and I'm grateful, for my father bringing me into this world. But I don't think that he, as a man, was equipped to be able to deal with the responsibilities that life would press on fatherhood. So it's not even about like, as a father, you come into this world and it's like, I got to do this. But you got to deal with all of the battles, paying bills and being able to be a strong Black image in a world where Black images were held a certain way when it came to strength. You look at strong Black figures in history, they was what? Executed, exiled, imprisoned, things like that, So my father, he was a powerful man. Probably the only person that I know besides myself that anything that he's seen he could do. I never seen my father, anything he applied his mind to, he made happen just like that. He had a natural ability for that, right? And I adopted that ability. Whereas though that it's better off asking me what I can't do than what I can do. But I think a lot of my growth came from me being able to forgive what he didn't do so I can figure out what I need to do. And I think that's for any boy that's growing up who has a father that doesn't know how to show up emotionally because they didn't have people show up for them emotionally. Right. And like I said, listening to this, I know people like, dang, like, it's rough. No, my father was a great man, but he didn't know how to do certain things and he worked with what he had. I'm thankful for him, bringing me into this world, but I'm also thankful for the universe bringing other men into my life to be able to fill in the gaps that help me strive and grow in the areas I need to grow in, right? It's a collective thing. Like a man can't be a man singly by only interacting with one man. A boy cannot become a man by only interacting with his father. He needs to have other men that second and third and fourth and fifth the example and lessons, that his father is teaching so that he understands, this ain't just coming from my father, but this is what it is to be a man. And our society doesn't have that, So you have a lot of black boys that grow up in this world, not understanding what it is to be a man, and they're confused. I learned a lot of great deals of growth and development from men that I never met. I read through books, but I did have a man that was consistent. Bob Imhotep was consistent in being an example, but he was also consistent in the way that he dealt with things. You gotta realize I'm mixed, right? So my mother's white, my father's black. And I remember my mother's birthday was coming up. And I was like, I didn't know wanted to send my mother something. I was locked up at the time. So Bob Imhotep was like, just send her this poem, right? He gave me the poem, and the poem was like, the importance of a black mother, right? And I was like, man, my mom white though. He was like, you can write it towards, your mom. She's still your mother, right? She's still powerful. She's still beautiful, right? And I was like, yeah. He was like, all right, apply it. And it wasn't like he made something that felt awkward, not awkward. So when you look at manhood, right, most boys feel awkward about themselves. Well, what men do is men step in, to be able to clear the path. So it isn't that awkward that this is the right path. You on the right path. Yeah. You doing the right thing. You know how many times I wish my father would have patted me on the back and been like, I'm proud of you, you're doing the right thing. It would have encouraged me to continue to keep doing what I was doing. But I didn't get that. I got the hard shoulder because that's what he got, And then when I did do good, know what he say? What you want to cook it? That's what you're supposed to do. It's a time and place, right, to give tough love. And then there's a time and place to be able to nurture, right? And that's what I do with my son. I nurture him because there were men that nurtured me. They made it okay to be nurturing, right? Because we live in a society where as though that to say that a black man or a man is nurturing, right? Some people try to add cotton to it. They try to make it as soft or something, that is not. It's a no-no. Women nurture. Men nurture too. You feel what I'm saying? When you see a young man, he like, oh, come here, let me holler at you for a minute, shorty. Like, what, man? Look, man, what you doing out here, man? You could be doing something better than this. Yeah. But so, all right, so what's other options then? That's nurturing. You feel what I'm saying? Because you're taking the time, right, to recognize. I'd have paid anything for my father to recognize me.
I've realized that for men, from other men, fathers, uncles, mentors, and mostly from women, unless they had a really great mother that really nurtured them, allowed them to be safe in intimacy, right? As men, the men, we don't feel safe in intimacy. I remember with times where I was young and someone would do something for me, I would say good looking. I didn't know how to say thank you or good looking out. Or I'll hit my buddy up and like, man, let's hang out. Now and I say, man, I miss you, bro. Let's catch up. Or I love you when I get off the phone call instead of saying love. These little words and this, shift in my speech, in my language, in my vulnerability allows me to be more intimate with my friend that's a brother so we can come closer, so we can help each other, all because I'm available to nurture and be nurtured, right? And I think somewhere in our line of masculinity, nurturing doesn't feel safe or the perception of it doesn't seem strong. Where do you think the disconnect is within boys and men where we don't feel safe with intimate interactions with ourselves, with others, especially like in relationships or with people who are challenging us to grow? Where does that disconnect come from?
The disconnect comes from because we have spiritually lost our way. We aren't on our spiritual path. We take the physical route. We take the lower nature route because that's what we're used to. To be nurturing, to have intimacy, means that you are already on a spiritual path and you understand the importance of connecting with other people and connecting with human beings. It's a human thing. To be nurturing, I mean, to be intimate is a human thing, right? But you see guys, they struggle with their own woman with being able to be intimate because they think intimacy, I mean, is sex. You know, they run straight to sex because they don't have control of their lower nature. Intimacy, I mean, is being in close proximity. And it's not just physically close proximity, it's being in close proximity, I mean, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, you know, where you can enjoy someone's space, I mean, without even touching them or being physical. But that's a level of maturity that it takes time to grow into in order to be able to have that, right? You know, but when you have boys that have been handled rough their whole life, what do you think they're going to give? They're going to give a rough interaction because that's what they're used to, right? You know, men and women are supposed to balance a child to be able to understand, I mean, how to use both properties that gave him life. A man and woman brought you into this world to give you life. Both properties represent qualities, I mean, of humanness or being human. So when you have an imbalance in the household, the child is imbalanced. So you grow up in a household where your mom has to be the man and the father, the mother and the father. She has to be, I mean, the nurturer and the disciplinarian. You become confused about how you fall in line and how you deal with things, right? You know, and that's the problem. You feel what I'm saying? That we don't have that balance because we are being reared and raised by people, I mean, that aren't balanced. You know, so my father wasn't balanced. Yes, he was physically in the household, but he wasn't physically there. And he wasn't emotionally there, so he couldn't be physically there. He wasn't mentally there, so he couldn't be physically there. You feel what I'm saying? He wasn't spiritually there, so he couldn't be spiritually there, right? And it's because he functioned from a distance of safety. So my thing is this: if my safety is being right next to you, right, I don't mind being vulnerable. But if my distance is, the man, is that I got to sit at the end of the couch and you sit at the other end of the couch, and now I feel comfortable, right? That's my space of distance of comfort. That's where I'm at. That's my safety, right? Because I don't know how to get closer. You see it in people's nonverbal communication, how they interact. It lets you know where they at. You get in a relationship. When you first started dealing with the sister you with, and y'all wasn't all cuddling and stuff when y'all first met each other. You had to develop that level of safety in that distance. So the closer y'all got, now, when you sit down, she want to sit right next to you. She right there, you know? You feel what I'm saying? When you going through something, I mean, she know how to rub the back of your neck, I mean, and make you feel good. You know? She know how to do the little things because y'all have created a space of intimacy where y'all can do that. That's growth, and it takes time in order to do that, right? So when you growing up, like me, I grew up West Baltimore, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna tell you something, right? I told my clients, right? And this is how dysfunctional it was in the household. My father, I knew when he was on good times because his hat would be backwards or he was high. But if his hat was forward, then I knew I had to be on my P's and Q's. So when I come in the house, that's what I'm looking for. Now, what's going on is I'm regulating my level of safety. How do I interact? I'm regulating myself, right? My mother, when she didn't drink, she was the kindest person, the most giving person in the world. But when she would drink, I mean, she would be abusive. She would be verbally. She would be all of these things, right? So I have to measure my safety. And how do I move? What do I say? So what happens is now, what does that do to me psychologically? How does that affect me, I mean, and my growth and development into a man when I have all of these places, I mean, that I have to measure out how I move? So I can't really be myself, you know, because if I come in and my father's on good times and he want to hug me and rub my head, I mean, and joke or whatever, and I can joke back and it's good. But if he not, and I come in and I joke and he smacked me, and I was like, whoa, like I'm confused, right? But how I healed from it was I realized, I mean, that my mother and my father were dealing with things that were way before me. But you can't tell a child at 7, 8, 9 years old, I mean, oh, your mom and your dad had some things they went through when they growing up. All I know is this is what I experience every day, right? So when you have boys that are growing up in West Baltimore, East Baltimore, and Baltimore in general, where they don't know what they walking into when they come in the house, you at war. That's a battlefield. You feel what I'm saying? That's a battlefield, right? Like me, I had to do certain things. Like I come in, boom. Oh man, my aunt, uncle, they in the house. I gotta go check my stuff. They done stole something, I mean, and now they gonna get high with it. This is the mentality. You feel what I'm saying? This is what I got to deal with. You feel what I'm saying? So we got to look at those things. And then that's not even including, I mean, the stuff that happens in the environment, in my community. You feel what I'm saying? I'm sitting there trying to fit into my environment. My mother and father don't prescribe to Jordans and Nikes and stuff like that, you know, and New Balances. So I had to wear thrift store clothes and shoes. That's what I wore. I didn't see nothing wrong with it until the first person cracked the joke. Now I'm looking at myself because I don't fit in with my peers. You feel what I'm saying? So to me, it was normal in the household. So the reality is, like, my mother and father really didn't prepare me for all this. So now I'm at war in school, I'm at war in the community, and I'm dealing with the war at home, right? And then wonder why I ended up in prison with 30 years. And now I'm sitting here and I'm realizing that there's a lot of things that I didn't know that I'm starting to learn. And I can't blame my mother and father because they didn't have it to give. They gave me the best they had, what they was working with, right? So I got to make sure that my son doesn't go through what I went through. So I have to make sure I put him in a position to win. But the only way that he's going to win, I have to be winning. I have to be winning, right? So that means that I got to surround myself with men that keep me on my game, that keep me on my P's and Q's, keep me with the edge to grow, right? You know, so that means that I got to always be humble. You know, I always got to be humble, right? Because the day that I stop being humble is the day that, I mean, I figure out, I think I know it all, and now I'm out here just doing whatever I want to do. And next thing you know, those that look towards me, I mean, are left to fall to that. I don't want my son to grow up arrogant. I want him to grow up, I mean, appreciative of life. I want him to be able to grow up with understanding. That's why anytime he asks me something, I explain it to him.
And that's the thing, man. Salute to you to all the work and the growth and even sitting down for 18, 17 years of your life, behind, in prison, you discovered a new you, a new person, a new identity. With that story you just told about your upbringing, your childhood, millions of people come up with that same story in a different way, right? I always tell people the challenges are different, but the emotions are the same, right? And for you, to people listening out there, after you explain this, I want you to get into like how men can hold space in a healthy way for women. What does a young man or young boy do in that circumstance you grew up to get in a more alignment of their soul or more alignment of their life where they're fulfilled and they're living out their design, or at least on the right path to get where they want to go without going down the wrong path and do the things they regret? What is something tangibly or practically that they can do or at least think about to get in a space of, man, the right action and doing a battle surgery within their mentality and their mind to live a good life?
First thing we have to recognize that we are communal people. We can't do this by ourselves, right? There are people that poured into me. So when you look at wisdom, right? Wisdom takes a succession of things that happen in order for it to actually be possessed. That means that you have to go through experiences, learn from those experiences, have to watch other people, I mean, that have overcame those experiences and how they move, and then study them and then implement what they are doing to your own. And then you have to go through trial and error to be able to come to a point where you have reached the level of, I have wisdom in this. I have understanding, I mean, that I can deal with this any way that it comes at me, right? But that takes time, right? But it also takes you exposing yourself to people, I mean, that you veer and look at as the path. You feel what I'm saying? When we believe, I mean, that it starts with us and ends with us, we've already destroyed our chances in growing and becoming great. So what I mean by we are communal people, we are people, I mean, that we need other people that move in the same ideology of life. We have a lot of people that have a lot of information, but they're confused about who they are because they aren't centered. They aren't centered upon something, I mean, that they can go back to. So when you're centered, that means, I mean, that when I step out into the world, when I'm faced with a challenge or a situation, instead of me winging it, I go back to my reference and I make my decision from my reference. My reference, I mean, is what I'm rooted in because it keeps me on my path. But if we jump out there, right, we may be so far off the reservation, we might not ever find our path again. So we have to stay rooted, right? So the thing that what I would give to the people will be this. Like me, I'm rooted in an organization. I'm rooted in a culture. I'm rooted in understanding, right? I've been a part of the organization I've been a part of for over 20 years. PLM has been my reference when it comes to manhood, fatherhood, being a husband. You know what I'm saying? It's been my reference because there are men and women that are a part of this organization that are moving in the same manner, right? So that means I'm not alone. So that means that when I look back, I can look towards this person, and that person, right? And be like, look, I'm going through this and not feel like an alien when I express what I'm going through. Like right now, if you were extremely vulnerable, right, about something you were going through, to most people out there, right, they'll look at you strange because they're gonna be like, oh, like, dang, that's deep. When you are vulnerable with people that have the same ideology and shared vision, oh, I dealt with that last Tuesday. This is what we need to do. Like, let's sit down and talk about this. So you have someone to be able to keep you on the path, right? Just like those same people, right, can come to you and be like, I'm going through this. And you can be like, well, yeah, I overcame that last year. So this is what we got to do. So now you have a reference. When you stay rooted, right, you never lose your path. But you got to figure out what you need to be rooted in. That's the main thing. Because a lot of us, we got our minds in like 5 different other flower pots.
Yeah, let me ask you a challenging question though. Or not even a challenging question, a question that goes against what you're saying. Reference point, community, communal, right? You say PLM. So say for instance, someone grows up in the church, religious background, Catholic, Christianity, maybe Buddhism, Muslim, whatever, right? Great. Or they have that, or they have that family environment with their siblings, or they have a gang, right? You know, we know gangs run a lot of these men in different places. And that's a brotherhood, that's a sense of community, that's a sense of family and order and reference point. However, in this case, that part of the family or the community has went against me or made me feel less or weak or shameful. And now I feel I'm out here by myself. I'm out here alone. I don't know what to look to. I don't know who to talk to because now the people I thought loved me and who were for me, something went down. Oh, I made a mistake. Now I look different. And now they're getting rid of me, or I got divorced and now I'm not accepted. I quit my job and now my mom and dad don't love me the same because I'm not making the same money. I left my 20-year marriage and to go after my career, and my kids don't like me. My husband doesn't like me, or my partner doesn't like me. Like all these things that we built our identity in, now that goes against us. How do you get back to center when you in that part of life? Or even bigger, you lose a job, you get furloughed, the terrorists hit, diversity and inclusion, all that's over. And now the identity you hold is overshadowed. And now you can't even be who you are to the community you in. So then you go in hiding or you suffocate in silence and you're dealing with depression, anxiety. How do you find yourself when you feel like everybody's against you, the world is against you, and you're back up against the wall and you don't know what to do?
So in that situation, right, I always tell people sometimes the best route is not forward, but through you. So you have to come back to self because I've been in positions where I felt as though that everything was against me. I felt like an alien. I felt like nobody understood me, right? And when I went inside myself, right, and I took the time to be quiet, to reflect upon myself, the universe brought me opportunities. So it's a purpose for prayer. It's a purpose for why I got my altar, why I pray in front of my altar, why I give offerings, because I'm going inside of self to receive, what is being given, right? So the universe, whatever you put out comes back tenfold, right? I tell my clients all the time, I say, you think when you're asleep that the whole world is up plotting against you, specifically you, right? I said, when you believe that, right, it's easy for you to miss all the opportunities, that are outside of you because you're going to look at everything, as this, and that, right? What I've learned is that when you listen to self and you do what you know is right from here, you receive everything on the outside. You feel what I'm saying? Because it wants to be there, right? It's not about going forward outside of yourself. Sometimes you got to go through yourself to get to your path, right? And like I said, when I met Bob Imhotep, I was at a breaking point in my life where, as though, that I really was going to war with everybody. I had just beat up a dude or whatever. I just ran down on a dude with a knife. So he heard about it, walked up on me, and I told him, I said straight up and down, I was like, man, if anything you saying ain't gonna get me home, man, I don't want to hear it. He said, bet, I got you. But I didn't realize, right, what he meant by I got what you need to get you home. It wasn't about leaving prison. It was home right here. This was home, right? because we fight ourselves so much because no peace here. So everything that I did, it brought peace here. You feel what I'm saying? And then it gave me the ability to be able to make real steps outside myself because I was able to make the right steps inside myself. You know, everything comes back to self, right?
So basically, people listening and watching, what he said is that you have to make steps inside yourself. That is golden. You have to make steps inside yourself for the steps outside of yourself to align, to make sense from your heart center. That is so beautifully put. And I think we don't think about it like that because we don't go home to self. We go home to the person or the community or the people and places. And but you, at that point before meeting him, it sounds like you had a wall up. You had a heart wall. And he was able to break down that wall of your heart to go into so you can take those steps with peace to come out 10 times better because you had somebody who was seeing you from a heart space and not from an ego space, who wasn't judging you, but was observing you and saying, how can I help this young brother? And it wasn't about, like you said, going home, but he got you home. And you put those steps on the inside, and now you're on the outside taking the same steps. But so I just wanted to really pull that out because I've never in my life heard taking steps with inside yourself, which is within your home. And that's what the piece is.
Yeah, this is where it is right here. And the thing is, one thing about leadership is this, right? You may think you're receiving one thing, right? But you're really receiving something greater, right? And a lot of my boys, the stuff that I teach them, they don't realize that I'm giving them the same method that was given to me. For example, right? There's no such thing, as recreating the wheel. It's the same method, right? It's the same properties, right? But there's different methods to being able to connect with people. You feel what I'm saying? So the properties are, that everybody wants to belong to something. Everybody wants to feel safe. Everybody wants to feel connected. Everybody wants to feel valued. Everybody wants to feel recognized, right? Now, the thing is, right, some of us want to be recognized for things that are surface based, but they're really deeper down side. There are things that you want to be recognized, that you haven't even discovered yet. And me, I thought, recognition was, fame, things like that. But the real recognition was that I wanted to be the person that created, the shift in people's lives that transformed lives I would never meet. And just to have the feeling to know that I did that, right, is rewarding enough, than any type of accolades, or recognition. Because that means what I've done here, right, can never be wiped away, and that's what Baba Emotep has done. What he has done can never be wiped away because it will be in extensions of people, that have gained from that, right? Like you look at yourself, Eric, and the work you do, right? More people have met you through the work that have impacted the people that you have been directly in contact with because of the ripple effect. We don't realize, that people are living legends. You know what I'm saying? Because you hear about them and it's like, oh, I heard about this person, but you never met them. You never was around them, right? But other people's, one thing about growth is this, right? One person's growth can be the growth of an entire nation. One person. So imagine, right, all the growth that you have helped create in everybody that you've interacted with extends.
I had a guy on my podcast, Christopher Lee Meyer, and he says E equals MC squared. The more you grow, the more I grow, the more we grow. But if you're trying to get everything around you to grow without growing, you're failing. So just focus on the growth within yourself. And I think it's a word or terminology we use: spirit activation, spirit expansion. And now when that spirit evolves within my soul, your soul, we all evolve into a higher plane because we're making it about the collective that we get to serve. And that's good through one person who has 1 million followers, one person who has 10 employees, or just ourselves who people come to our page just to get motivation and inspiration. But we want to grow. We want to add more light, more value, more positivity, more strength, more encouragement, more empowerment, more authenticity and transparency so people can feel safe to say, look, not only I can do it and I can make a difference, but I have somebody as a pillar or blueprint that has done it or somewhat can relate to where I'm going or where I'm at to have the life I see for myself. And sometimes in my journey, it's been a challenge because I didn't know what I was doing However, I knew where I was going. You get what I mean? Because I was following my inner being, my inner path that home within. It didn't make sense logically to people, but it made sense to how I felt. And then I would make the left, then make the right, then go straight. And then I end up where everyone's like, wow. But before that end game, the end goal, that outcome, the income I was putting in didn't really line up for people because it wasn't making sense in that moment. And so that's why I want to go back to people understanding you got to get around like-minded individuals who have the same ideology, but you got to get around people who respect who you are and want to help you get where you want to go, but have an example or be in an environment that supports the example you're trying to become and allow you to feel safe to be who you are in the moment, because we don't have enough of that. And I want to just take a quick pivot and to shift, getting into the masculine, allowing the feminine to feel safe, right? And then feminine can allow the masculine to feel safe. Because I do feel like in partnerships and relationships, there's not one size fit all. Women need to feel safe, men need to feel safe. But somehow, in some places, in some environments, in some cultures, there's clashing of vibrations. There's no equilibrium, right? There's no balance in the relating, in the dating, in the love, on this kind of war. It's like if we're brothers and another brother tells me about you to make me feel different about you, now we're clashing. Instead of me understanding what's at play or what's at fight, how can we as men, you and I, men who are going to watch this, and women as well, come together to have a more fulfilling relationship with the opposite gender and to feel safe?
It goes back to self. When a man is insecure about who he is, he will never create the security for the woman that he's with. It'll never happen. So everything comes back to self, right? I'm secure in who I am, so it's easy for me to do the things that make other people feel secure around me. But if I'm insecure about who I am, right, they don't know how to move around me. You feel what I'm saying? And everything is going to be viewed as an attack from my perspective. So we can never build anything that is real, right? So when we look at men and women, right, men and women create a complete understanding, right? Together, the complete understanding is this, right? You have a child. When that child looks towards life, they have to be able to see their mother and father, right, as the practitioners of that. If one is active and the other one is inactive, that means that that child has a partial understanding about reality. But when both are active and work together to create synergy, that child has a complete understanding, about how to move in life and what life is really about. When we are struggling in our own self, right? Like you look at the entire person, right? You got the mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, financial self, right? I always talk about this, right? I talk about these 5 selves, right? When you have balance in all 5 of those selves, you have security in who you are, right? That means that I can show up emotionally, you feel what I'm saying? Sound. I can show up mentally, you feel what I'm saying? Focused. I can show up physically healthy. I can show up spiritually enlightened. I can show up financially stable. I can show up in these areas. But when you're struggling in 2 to 3 of those areas, those 2 struggling areas attack those other 3. So it causes a domino effect. So that person, right, can pretend all they want because you're leaning on what you have that is strong so hard that after a while, it's like one of my knees are bad and I'm leaning on a good one. Soon my good one gonna be a bad knee because I'm putting too much pressure on it, right? There's no balance, right? And life is about balance and stability, right? So you got to be able to create that balance. On one of my quote books, I say, never highlight your strengths and overlook your weaknesses because your neglected weaknesses will grow to become strong to make your strengths null and void. They will no longer be a strength. And I talk about that in my new book, The Book of Right Action, that's about to come out. And I talk about being able to create that stability, right? You got to have fortitude in order for you to be able to create stability in all the other areas. One of the things that I see that most men struggle with, as well as women, they struggle with being vulnerable and honest about their struggles because they think that by talking about it, they make it real, but it is real. They hide it because you got to realize we got some of the best actresses and actors in the world, and they're not on TV. You feel what I'm saying? Because they rather pretend that everything is fine, when it's not. Me, I always push the initiative, to have the conversation. Because vulnerability is a superpower. The more vulnerable you are, right, the more true you are to who you are and what you're dealing with, right? But also vulnerability, right, is contagious because what it does is it makes another person feel comfortable with being vulnerable, right? I guarantee you, if you sit down with your girl tonight, your lady tonight, and you have a conversation that you've never had with her about something that's vulnerable in your life, right? Watch how she'll start opening up about some things too. But it takes vulnerability to be able to seek out vulnerability, and I do this with a lot of my clients, and they open up because I don't hold back. And next thing you know, they want to have the conversation. They want to deal with things. I'm talking about people that the staff is saying like, man, I don't know how you got through to them. And I said, I got through to them because I got through to myself.
There it is. Bingo. The way you get through to people is you get through to yourself. That's genius.
Yeah, I got to go through me to get to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? But if I'm trying to go through you by not going through me, I ain't never going to connect. That's a spiritual component. You feel what I'm saying? Because by opening myself up, I automatically make you feel comfortable with opening up. It's like, Dad, he putting the chips on the table. I might as well put the chips on the table. And it taps into areas that we have neglected.
Or we don't know we have. Like, we don't know we have until someone tells their story. And the thing is, what we don't know, especially at a young age, we don't know who we were until we think about where we were at. I remember at 22 years old, I'm still, like, wow, I had $1,000 to my name. I left Baltimore to come to LA. I knew one person. So I'm like, damn, how did I do that? I just had faith. Faith in what? That I couldn't be in Baltimore. I didn't have no circumstance in a way where I knew the outcome of coming here. I had $1,000 on one person.
A part of you did know.
Right. But what I'm saying, I didn't have enough evidence to make that decision. My evidence was unseen. It was my faith, my certainty. I didn't know I was going to stay. I didn't have a job. It was just completely unknown, but I knew I wouldn't stand in Baltimore. So by the time I get a tough, spot in life, I think about that moment. I did that 15 years ago. And that's why I'm here on this podcast. Not because I did this, if they didn't know, I took a risk 15 years ago that you don't know about, you couldn't see. So if you're a young guy, a girl out there, and you feel like you got your last, like I'm trying to tell you, I came to a different city, one person with $1,000. And when I came here, I gave 750 to someone on Craigslist to pay $450 a month for rent, right? So I was already living life on the edge, not knowing, but I had faith. And through that, I just kept going. And I struggled. It was tough. But like you said, that moment today makes me appreciate who I was then, because I know that you can do the unthinkable if you're not allowing yourself to stay small, but you need people as mirrors to say, you can do this. I had Tony Robbins. I had Bob Proctor. There was no Adisa Dempsey around. Malcolm and Martin wasn't, like, they was in books and stuff, but they wasn't present in the field where I could understand the journey. And so people like yourself, myself, and leaders, man, I'm just glad to know you as a friend, to know you as a brother, that you are the man today, because I know if anything will go wrong in my life, I know I could call you and you're going to keep it real and you're going to hold me accountable. More importantly, you're going to give me bandwidth to make me feel safe about whatever I got going on, even if it's embarrassing. And I know I can trust that from you. And that's why I value your opinion. I value how you show up. And I feel like you are the mayor for Baltimore for personal development, psychology, man versus male, becoming more. And I think sometimes the world we live in today, we give so much accolades and acknowledgement to what it looked like versus what it actually is. Because I tell people social media is not real life, right? Just because someone looks successful doesn't mean they are successful.
Yeah.
But as we get older and as we evolve, all those towers will fall and the truth will come to the surface and people will see that, but it takes time. So for you, how do we get in your space of connectivity? How do we work with you one-on-one on the container? Where are you in Baltimore where people can connect mentally, physically, spiritually, socially, to be more of them, male or woman, to get the medicine you bring to life? How do we connect with you?
Well, I got my various social media outlets. I'm on YouTube, Adisa Fatu. I'm on Facebook, Adisa Fatu. and I am on IG as Action Figure Yo. But also in Baltimore, I do a monthly workshop. It's PLM's Manhood 101 workshop, and it deals with the real conversation to be able to get to the real issues that we are struggling with and going through.
PLM, to people who don't understand, who going to be listening, what does that stand for?
Pan-African Liberation Movement.
Got
So it's been around since 95. It's an organization that is geared towards the advancement, uplifting of the Black community. It is a program, I mean, it was a prison-based program that came into society and has done a lot of good work. It's been around for 30 years. But this organization is about being able to advance and push us forward. We have a platform that's geared into being able to politically educate people, to teach them about their culture, teach them about their history, and also to help people organize. A lot of our people aren't organized. We don't know how to come together. We don't know how to fight. We don't know how to support each other. We don't even know how to show up. A lot of times we have feelings, right, that we don't know how to actualize them in a proactive way. We know how to complain, we know how to cuss and fuss, we know how to destroy stuff, but we don't know how to get organized in a way where so that we can actually make progression. And that's what this organization is geared towards helping our people do.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one last question. What's one thing that keeps you spiritually fit?
One thing that keeps me spiritually fit is always leaning on vulnerability as the way to solutions. I always have the honest conversation, whether it be with my wife, whether it be with the leader of the organization I'm a part of, whether it be even my own manager at my job, my 9 to 5. I always have the honest conversations because it gets me straight to the clarity. When we sit here and we give the bare minimum, we receive the bare minimum. You know, you never know how a person's going to show up into your life until you lay your cards on the table. So that's what keeps me spiritually fit because we're social people.
Yeah.
You know, relationships are important to me. I'm not going to tiptoe around a relationship. I'm going to have a conversation. I'm going to deal with it. And whatever's revealed from it, is how I'm going to process it, take it in, and move.
I love that. Well, Adisa, thank you for your time, brother. I love you, man. Thank you for being present. Thank you for the medicine and the wisdoms today. And people follow him on Instagram, Action Figure Yo. Go to his website, his Facebook, his YouTube. I'll put everything in the show notes. And subscribe to the podcast, Spiritual Fitness. Go to the YouTube, check us out. DM him, DM me. Let's connect. And this is another Spiritual Fitness podcast. We out. Peace.